Yeah, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're most welcome to today's webinar organized by Moore, Bishop and Roots. Promises to be an amazing time, promises to be an informative time, and it promises to be very, very insightful. We are so delighted to have you join us for this webinar, and we can't wait to hear from our guest speaker as she gives us more insights on our topic for today. So on our agenda today, we have a list of activities. We have the introduction and the housekeeping. We have our welcome address. We have the speaker's presentation and the live polls. We have the question and answer session. We have the survey. And last but not the least, we have the closing remark by our moderator. So we are very delighted to have every one of you from everywhere in the world you are connected from. And it's really a great thing to have you join us for this interesting webinar. So please, we would like to just get your location quickly. We'd like to know where you are connected from. And we'd like you to just kindly use the chat button to tell us your name and where you're connected from. So we'll be able to welcome you specially to our webinar for today. Thank you very much. We have Jeff, Durban, South Africa. You're welcome. We have Shalom, Lagos, Nigeria, Professional Services. We have Grace from Lagos. Grace, we are so excited to have you. We have Romisa, all the way from Sheffield, United Kingdom. So great to have you, Romisa. We have Sheung from Ottawa. You're most welcome. Prima from Lagos, Nigeria, Corporate Services. Good to have you, Prima. We have Abiodun, Tax Consultant, Lagos, Nigeria. Titilayo, so great to have you. Audit Associate, Lagos, Nigeria. Ifeoluwa, Sherifat, a whole lot of us are actually sending in their location. We have Andrew from Lagos, Nigeria. Tosin, so great to have you. Audit Associate, Lagos, Nigeria. So without wasting much of our time, we have Evelyn. Evelyn, nice to have you. Tax Associate, People's Service, Lagos, Nigeria. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So without much ado, we'd like to move over to other pertinent things for the day. So our topic is a very interesting one. Like we all know, ESG as a business imperative, delivering value through sustainability. And it promises to be a very incisive one. It promises to be a very informative one because we'll be learning key things about ESG, business imperative, and how we can deliver value through sustainability. So first of all, we'll learn about the evolution of ESG and what ESG reporting is all about. Ifeanyi from Lagos, Nigeria, you're welcome. We have learn about the goal of corporate ESG and sustainability. We're also going to be learning about the importance of having an ESG strategy in place to improve the ability to manage risk, to maximize opportunities, and to enhance enterprise value. I'm so delighted or excited today that I'll be learning all of this, and I'm very sure our participants, wherever you are also delighted or excited that you'll be part of this interesting webinar. So we would like to just take a quick poll to know how you're feeling before we move over to the welcome address by Shalom. So please, we would like you to use the, we would like you to take our first poll. We'd like to know how you're feeling. So we'll be very certain that, yes, you are very much ready for our webinar today. Please, this poll is just for 30 seconds, so it's not going to take long. Please, when the poll comes up, please just tell us how you're feeling so we'll be able to get ahead with other activities for the day. So we've exhausted our time, and now we're going to close the poll. And from my results here, 68% of us are feeling very great. 18% are feeling very good. 6% just okay. 6% not so good, and nobody is feeling not great at all. So that's interesting. It shows that majority of us are feeling great, feeling good, feeling just okay to commence with this webinar and to enjoy our time in this webinar. Thank you very much for participating in that poll. So without wasting much of our time, we'd like to move over to the next on our agenda, which is the welcome address, and that will be taken by Shalom. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maduka. Good day to all our distinguished guests. We must commend and appreciate your show of commitment to increasing knowledge by way of registration. For the benefits of those that are not conversant with us, Moore Bishop and Rooks is a leading Nigerian independent audit advisory and tax firm within the Moore Global Network with a global footprint in over 110 countries with over 30,000 dedicated people. We operate by the EXCEED principle. EXCEED is the acronym that stands for Exceeding Clients' Expectations Daily. We identified a knowledge gap in the awareness of environmental social governance amongst the industry sectors in our region, and this inspired our initiative to organize this webinar. We have partnered with one of the best in our network in person of Alexa Ray Sheba, the head of ESG, Moore Johannesburg. This promises to be a very educative ride, so hang on tight and enjoy. Over to you, Maduka.
All right, thank you very much, Shalom, for that welcome address. And we won't waste much of our time because we have a lot of activities scheduled for today. So moving forward, we'll be inviting our guest speaker in a couple of seconds. But before we do that, we'd like to take a quick poll to actually check if some of us, or if we understand what ESG, or we have an idea of what ESG is all about. So the poll will be on our screen. Kindly just respond to the poll so we would have an idea, know if we have any knowledge about ESG, even as we are about to have our guest speaker grace this great occasion. So this poll is just for 30 seconds. So thank you very much. The poll is closed. 75% of us actually saying they know what ESG is all about. Nobody is saying they don't know, while just 25% saying or asking what is ESG. So I'm very certain that all our questions will be answered by our guest speaker, and I encourage every one of us to try as much as possible to get our writing materials very handy, because the session from our guest speaker will be a very insightful one. So before we call on our guest speaker, I'd like to call on one of our own, in the person of Jeff, to give us one or two notes for our webinar today. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much, Maduka. Thank you very much, Shalom. And I just wanted to introduce myself. Alexa at the moment is just having a little bit of a challenge on reconnecting, so I would like to just say a few words as we enter this event. I'm the global head of sectors and markets for the Moore Global Network, and the ESG program was initiated through the engagement of all our member firms across the world around this topic of environmental, social, and governance. We found that our clients were encountering, not only from a regulatory perspective, but a doing business perspective, a lot of challenges in addressing some of the future focus of their businesses. Many during the COVID time had challenges with reorganizing their supply chains. Many had difficulties in finding and resourcing staff. And a lot of questions were being asked around, why we're in business and why particularly young people are joining businesses, and what is the retention model. So during that process, we were able to work with our member firms and a number of our clients to identify exactly what are the kind of target opportunities, how could they grow their businesses. And often this is encouraged, as I've said, many of the younger members of our internal organization within Moore, but also our clients to step forward and take on senior roles in developing their the firm's strategy for the future. We've tended to focus a lot prior to the pandemic, a lot around the environmental issues, and often we would talk about the sustainability, the impacts on the environment, and we looked at things, and particularly in the Nigerian environment where you have, very sophisticated business operations, but sometimes they're not always, complying with local conditions in terms of employment. Sometimes they may have some challenges in dealing with the emissions. It's really quite, it became more and more evident that we needed to have a strategic approach, and not just about the environment, but to deal with some of the other matters as well. So as we got closer into this year, we started to prepare a method, an approach that would support our clients and develop, a more robust approach. Given that many of the regulators, whether they be in the European Union, whether they be in the Asia Pacific region, in Africa, the Americas, hadn't quite finalized what the actual frameworks would look like. And we've seen a multiplicity of frameworks, different approaches. The OECD has provided certain guidance on what their recommendations would be. And many organizations have developed their own frameworks and their own approaches. And so part of the challenge that we've encountered, and what Alexa will talk to you a bit about, is really just aligning, depending on which geography you're in, whether you're headquartered out of the US or you're headquartered out of the European region or Africa, Nigeria specifically, you may have to comply with a multi-dimensional ESG frameworks. You can't just, apply your own local frameworks, and you may need to consider more global opportunities as well, and considerations. So I'm trusting that that this session will give you a little bit of insight into the sectors that particularly have maybe got some particular challenges. Mining and energy is one of those, but also across hotels, hospitality, the media, financial services. We've found that each one has a very unique set of challenges. The geography plays a role, and the frameworks that they are encountering in their jurisdictions all pull together to make it a very exciting, very dynamic, and also a very challenging topic of conversation. And I believe Nigeria is well poised, given the complexity of your environment and some of the opportunities that you have within a very youthful organizations, that you are able to take some of these thoughts forward. And I'm really looking forward to the further engagement. I trust that Alexa has been able to reconnect, but I'll hand back to Maduka for now and let the process continue. Thank you very much, Maduka and Shalom.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff, for that wonderful keynote. And thank you for educating us on the need for us to comply with local and global ESG framework. And we'll try as much as possible to key into that and do the necessary. Thank you very much, Jeff. So at this point in time, we'll be having our guest speaker, Grace, this stage to tell us more about our topic for today, ESG as a business imperative, delivering value through sustainability. But before she comes to the stage, we're going to be reading a brief profile of our guest speaker, and I'll be inviting Grace to take us on the profile of our guest speaker for today. Over to you, Grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Maduka. Alexa Ray is more global ESG project manager and the head of ESG services, more Johannesburg. She's an admitted attorney of the High Court of South Africa and an environmental and mining attorney. She's energetic, versatile professional with years of multitasking experience in compliance, business administration, applied analytical thinking, and creative problem-resolving abilities. She supported the assessment of legal strategy, approaches to strategic impact litigation. She's an environmental and mining law specialist with experience in complex drafting and pleadings, briefs to advocates, memoranda to attorneys, and other legal correspondences. She's currently working in corporate finance and transaction advisory, using her due diligence and research skills to assist businesses with transaction services, including M&A, business restructuring, as well as other services offering through More Johannesburg. Alexa Ray was elected as the More Global ESG Project Manager due to her expertise in sustainability, compliance, and environmental law. Join me in welcoming Alexa Ray Sheba. Over to you, Alexa.
Maduka, thank you so much. Grace, thank you. And apologies to all. Unfortunately, South Africa is going through stage 6 of load shedding. And so our internet system is not staying well prepped in this time. But nonetheless, I want to thank you all again. And thank you so much for having me. And to Bishops and Rooks, you guys are doing some phenomenal advertising, and your social media is really, really fantastic. I even was speaking to Jeff about it and Joel to say how well you are performing on LinkedIn. It really is beautiful. But let's not talk about your marketing skills. Let's talk about what we're here to speak about, which is ESG. A topic I'm very passionate about. And Grace, thank you so much for the intro. I think our basic part of today is to give everyone a deep dive into what ESG is. Do we understand what the international frameworks are? Do we understand how we report on it? And then why is it good for business? Because a lot of the time, particularly clients in the Moore network who are mid-sized, they want to know, why must I spend more money to do something else? Do I really have to do this? So we're going to look at why it is a business imperative and exactly what that means for businesses going future, particularly also SMEs. So our first one is understanding what the pillars of E, S, and G are. So we've got E for environmental, we've got S for social, and G for governance. And these 3 elements when looking at them, are very important to look inward and look outward. So what I mean by that is, when we look at environmental impacts, we need to understand what is the impact that is happening within the business itself. What is the impact that that business is having on its external environment? And it's always a twofold reporting requirement. So very consciously, when we engage with our clients and we speak to our clients, particularly on these environmental elements, which are seen as like one of the strongest pillars at the moment, is there full transparency around your environmental credentials? What frameworks and policies are you reporting against? And what do we need to look at for the business based on the type of business it is? So what is material to the business? And the idea of materiality is a very interesting topic, particularly coming from an audit firm. We all understand what financial materiality means. So starting to understand what non-financial materiality is, it's a very, very interesting side element of ESG, which I hope that we can discuss at a later stage. So examples of the E would be your waste management, water management, carbon footprint, CO2 emissions. So that's our E pillar. Just as it says environment, it's something that we literally look at. How are we working inside? So how is the business recycling, or how are they optimizing their energy use? And landscape. And so we need to understand that environment is not going to always be something that is an impact to lots of businesses, because the businesses are not going to have the environmental impact that all businesses do. So a mining company will have large environmental impacts, but a professional services firm won't. The next is we're going to look at the element of S, social, which we see coming out quite strong at the moment, particularly in the non-profit space. It's something that's been identified previously. And the thing with the S is that there's a lot of stuff that businesses already have in place in terms of their social elements. So there will be HR policies, there will be policies in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. There will be broad-based economic empowerment policies, like in South Africa. So really policies from an HR perspective that are ensuring that the governance of the people employed, how they're employed, are they being paid fairly, are all elements that we have a look at there. Another thing that's also really important, particularly on the social side and what we see with like mining clients, is what is their impact to the external community. So when we look at social, is what is happening that business is affecting those around them. So how are they affecting their employees, and how are they affecting the community around them or the people around them? Are they engaging? Are they providing any further assistance? So in South Africa, we see a lot of legislation, particularly as well as in the Greater Africa region, which is fantastic in terms of the social element. So that's something that we identify that being very important, because the clients that are going to be reporting on ESG from a mandatory perspective are probably going to be your larger entities that have the social impact on the communities around them. Then we've got the G, governance, which I think is something that we all relatively understand, from a King 4 perspective, also from an auditing perspective, is that there's a lot of elements that need to be understood about governance within an entity to ensure that what they're saying they're doing under the E and the S is actually being done and actually being held to. And this is where the ESG reporting is so important, is that once an ESG report is actually drafted and that it is made public, what it does is that it shows that the company is providing full transparency about what they're reporting on and how they're making sure that it's kept in place. So a lot of the times, particularly now with the Pioneer program happening from Work Global, a lot of our firms have to do their own ESG reports, and people get scared to actually publish their reports about their businesses. It's not a nice thing to usually have out there in the public. You get scared that maybe you're not doing the right thing, but what it's doing is that it's providing confidence in customers and clients that you're doing what is right by saying here it is, and not just like sustainability reports or integrated reports which is my favorite, we promise we'll do something about this in 2050. ESG reporting actually says this is what we've done, this is how we're measuring it, where do we see ourselves in a year, and how are we going to get there? So literally putting in strategy and implementation and really telling those on the outside how you foresee your company being better. And that's one of our biggest things, is how do we make businesses better? And doing better business actually means that business becomes better. So the ESG reporting we're seeing, particularly from the More ESG white paper, if you guys haven't seen it, it is on the intranet. We're seeing that businesses who are reporting are seeing financial impact in the sense of cost saving, increase in revenue, decrease
All right, apologies, dear participants. Seems our guest speaker is having a bit of network glitch. We're very sorry about that. I'm very sure very soon she'll be with us, because as she tries to rectify a network glitch she's having.
Maduka, I think she may have to reconnect, because it seems like it took a little bit of a stagger there on the internet connection. Apologies for that. I'm sure she'll be rejoining back again. Right.
So you're welcome back, Alexa.
Apologies, the power just turned back on. So it knocks everything out. So as I was saying, is that one of the biggest elements is that ESG reporting really is showing increase in bottom line. Businesses are seeing staff retention, which within the crisis that we're having with employee retention is massive. Reduction in costs to find staff due to the fact that staff are staying for a business that is more sustainably like in tune and understanding. Particularly one of the most important things is that a lot of the people we're going to be hiring now are of our millennial and Gen Z population. So their ethics and understandings and values in business and how they see business is very much actually centralized on how a business values itself. So we're seeing that this type of reporting, elements of making sure that the company is understanding of its impact internally and externally, is actually drawing staff to those type of businesses. Just like we're seeing businesses that are actually understanding about sustainability, clients are going there. 74% more clients are willing to pay for sustainable products than non-sustainable products. And so we're really seeing a mind shift in the people. So now the question is, it's great. We're seeing a mind shift. We're seeing the things happening, but legally, in terms of regulation, what do we do? What are we supposed to do? How do we report? And this is where it gets very exciting, is that we currently have the establishment of the ISSB, the International Sustainability Standards Board, which was implemented in March this year after COP26, which was implemented under the IFRS, which is the first international sustainability board to look at producing regulations for the reporting of non-financial information. We are very excited about this because usually when boards of this nature are created or when they are developed, it usually takes quite a while to see any type of movement coming from them. But we've already got 2 drafts from the ISSB, IFRS S1 and IFRS S2, out exposure drafts to look at how companies can report on non-financial information. So the fact that we already have seen such a big shift since March, and that the deliveries and all the estimated timelines coming from the ISSB shows that there's a big push to assist in trying to create a universal and international framework that will assist businesses in reporting. Because currently what the issue is that we have over 5 internationally recognized reporting standards and frameworks. So literally companies and people have no idea what to report on. They hear all of these, we could like to call them the alphabet soup. They hear GRI, they hear TCFD, they hear SASB, they hear all of these things, and no one knows where to start, how to understand what is important for their business. So we literally are trying to create awareness within clients to say, okay, this is what the GRI is, this is what TCFD is. Let us help you understand. And while we help you understand, we are waiting for ISSB to finalize their reporting. And then that's going to give us a unified approach. But in the interim, let's take a deep dive into your business and let's see what's happening with your business. Do you know the risks that your business face if certain things had to discontinue? An example, which is one of my favorite, if you have attended the ESG 101 awareness, if you're not, it is on the internet to go and watch, but it was an example that was provided by Mary Tressel, our global leader of ESG. Armanino did a strategy and implementation of an ESG policy for the large American guitar company called Fender Guitars, large entity in the USA. And what happened is that they realized that they had a particular type of tree that was only needed to create the Fender guitar. And the issue was that deforestation was causing a reduction in these trees being available. If these trees ceases to exist, they no longer could produce their product. So literally an environmental impact of saying, here's a tree that directly correlates to our business. If this tree ceases to exist, our business literally becomes null and void. Do you think the company would have thought about that 10 or 15 years ago? And here's an example about a tree. I mean, we can see with the energy crisis currently going on, with the oil crisis, the gas crisis. If we don't think about these risks and really deep dive into what a business's risks could be if there was a supply interruption, a person interruption, then you are unable to determine your business continuity. So why ESG is a business imperative is very much like our Fender example. So the Armanino team went in, spoke to the team, and they said, okay, well, how much of the tree are we actually losing during your production? How much waste is there? And they realized that they had so many offcuts that they were just literally discarding and wasting and doing nothing with. And it had absolutely no impact on their business. So what they decided is they sat down with the executive team and they said, okay, well, what can we do with the waste? Okay, let's take the offcuts and let's create wooden guitar picks branded with Fender. With the other offcuts, let's create Fender placards so that we can have them above our guitars in music rooms. Let's brand them. So what happened? Waste reduction. Cost reduction went down for getting rid of the waste. They increased their income by having 2 new products now on the market that we're selling. The company employees reported being more satisfied and happy at work due to the fact that the company was actually looking at how to reduce its waste and how to reduce its impact on the environment. Staff retention went high, so obviously the costs to find new staff lowered, and there was a general sense of just better business and doing better business. And so there we see ESG as a business imperative, literally looking at a business risk, taking it and seeing the opportunity in it. What can we do else to better ourselves, better those around us, and at the same time, look what it's going to do. It's actually going to give us more money. And that's the funny thing that a lot of people don't understand, particularly clients, when you come to them and you say, okay, well, let's do an ESG report for you. All they hear is, oh, okay, my consultants want me to spend more money with them. But actually what we're doing is we're going into your business to assist you in finding how to run your business in such an efficient and effective way in line with standards that are set internationally, so that in a supply chain, let's say, for example, mass mart to macro to the store grocer on your side street, that entire supply chain now has the transparency to see what's happening with every single product as it goes through. So with supply chain transparency, we're seeing banks providing better funding. So companies that require capital input, debt input, equity input are having quicker access to that type of funding due to the fact that they're being more transparent about how their business is running. So there's literally this ripple effect that is occurring. And the funny thing that keeps coming up is when we sit down with clients and we say, okay, well, let's look at where you are and what you're doing. A lot of the time they have so many things in place already. They have a proper leave policy. They have a proper leave policy. They have, let's say, recycling. I mean, like at Johannesburg, they installed solar power at the beginning of last year. So these businesses are already doing small elements that fall under the E, S, and the G. And actually, that's what it is. It's actually just business, but with required reporting to hold you to what you say you're doing. So I think out of the big thing, I mean, I can speak about this topic for years and years and years, and happy to engage with anyone further. If you would like to give me a call, you can ask Jeffrey Blackbeard. Him and I do not sleep. We're happy to take any calls, any questions, any further discussions about it. But I think the one thing what we're trying to do, particularly from a global perspective, is that this is the first time that Moore Global has provided a service offering from a global front. And the reason why we actually decided to do it at a global level was to uplift the whole network. So not just uplift firms, but to uplift the whole network, because the change is coming. We're seeing the change. Mandatory reporting is coming, and so will be voluntary based on your size and your supply chain. So what better way to put Moore ahead of the curve than by uplifting the entire network, by having a pioneer program, upskilling and providing an ESG service offering that says not what our competitors are saying. I mean, this is my favorite. We're not going to name and shame, but our competitors, our big four, $1 billion input into ESG or sustainability for our clients. Okay, that's fantastic. Where's the service offering that differentiates you? And so that's what Moore did, is we said, what are our opposition not doing, or what are they not doing right? And how can we differentiate ourselves as a network to say that we actually care about this topic? We care about ESG in the sense of transparency, the requirement to report. So we are going to teach our whole network how to do it. We're going to provide free training, free ESG 101. Next year, we've got this ESG summit coming. We've got so many things that are happening. And it's about just making more better. And Jeff, here's this word from me too much. It's just about being better. So I think that's what ESG is. It is about being better and doing better. And eventually it will create actual change. And hopefully it will change the world, because then I'll be extremely happy. That's all I want to see. But it's going to be good for business. I really hope that I've enlightened you all today on this topic. Like I said, the ESG 101 awareness is available on the internet. If you would like any further information, if you would like to understand anything else, I'm always free to chat. Thank you so much for having me, Bishop and Rooks. I humbly appreciate being available to speak for you and being requested. And that's it from me.
All right, thank you very much, Alexa. You've really done a great job. We are so delighted to have you, and I must really appreciate your efforts thus far. It has been a very, very insightful session with you. So before we move over to the question and answer session, we don't know if Jeff, do you have 1 or 2 additions to make to what Alexa has said so far? Thank you.
No, yeah, thank you very much, Maduka. I think it's been fantastic, and I know, Alexa, there were some challenges on the communications there, which you overcame really well. But I think, Maduka, the real key points, I mean, on this call, as you mentioned, there are people from around the world, and they have different perspectives, and they have different insights into the ESG. I mean, this is an evolving process, and as this development, and Alexa is leading it for us internally, but engagement with clients and opinions from around the world that are on this call. There's people that have different perspectives. It'll be really good to hear that, because we're all going to learn, and we're all going to get enlightened into this process. Certainly with aspects like the COP programs that have just happened in Egypt. A lot of governments are sitting up and taking notice. The regulators are taking notice. The finances are taking notice. Customers and clients are taking notice. And hopefully, as Alexa said, if we can participate in changing the world to become a better place, I think that's the path that we should be on. So thank you very much, Maduka, Alexa, Shalom, and all the partners at Moore, Bishop and Rooks for this opportunity. And I'm sure Alexa will be very eager to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff, for that wonderful summary. We're so grateful for that. So moving forward, Alexa will be entertaining some questions from our participants, and would like to implore you to get some of your time, even as we call on our participants to use the question and answer box to ask questions based on what Alexa has said, or if you have any other question that has been in your mind so far concerning ESG, now is the best opportunity for you to ask. So please, my dear participants, please kindly use the Q&A section to drop your questions for Alexa and probably Jeff to do justice to them. Thank you very much. All right, the questions are already coming in, and I'll be taking them as they are coming. And the first question we have here, it says, where does a Nigerian startup begin with ESG reporting? Where does a Nigerian startup business begin with ESG reporting? So Alexa, could you just kindly give your response to this? Thank you very much.
100%, and thank you so much for the question. It's really important that we look at the words there, startup, which is quite a difficult space for businesses at that point in time, because they're staff constrained, they're cost constrained, particularly as a startup. So the question is, when you are looking to develop your business, when you're putting in your policies in place, keep in mind how you are impacting, and let's say it's a tech startup, for example. Keep in mind what is going to be your impact internally, what will be your impact externally, and from there, how can you look after your people? How can you make sure that the people around you are not being impacted negatively? And then from a governance perspective, make sure to have the right policies in place. Make sure to have your cybersecurity really well looked after, and have proper board decisions. So it's very difficult for a startup, and we see different types of reporting journeys for businesses. So for a startup, we would usually take them through a quite a light level ESG process, and that will start with strategy. Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself? Can we benchmark you against other competitors in your industry? What does good look like for them? And how can we make you look good? And how can you make yourself look good? And then how can you just do better business by having the thoughts of those things in place? So a biggest one, education awareness, and then original implementation at the startup of the company.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alexa, for that response. I think we have more questions on our chat box, and it's from Idowu saying, hello, Alexa, what are your thoughts on the Western countries in terms of fossil fuel? The US is signing new contracts with Venezuela and UK is opening new coal mines. Is this not hypocritical?
100%. So we have a very, very interesting issue at the moment with obviously the energy crisis. It has created a lot of supply chain disruption. So what we've seen actually over the last 10 years, where we've been moving to non-fossil fuel and more renewable technology, the impact of the energy supply chain has actually pushed us backward. And now we're starting to rely on fossil fuels again. So there's a lot of international crises that are impacting why we're going back to fossil fuels. And I don't believe that we're going to be able to remove fossil fuels completely, particularly from an African perspective. Our type of energy system doesn't have the infrastructure right now to move to renewable completely. So what do? Is we rather look at, okay, well, the terminology net zero comes to mind. What are we doing then to offset the carbon emissions that are happening? Because that business is going to continue. We can see it's going to continue. So what can we do to make it better or neutralize the issue? And that's why from the Paris Agreement, there's such a big push for net zero, because countries are aware that they can't remove fossil fuels or non-renewable.
I think she may have lost connection. Maduka, may I make a comment on this topic as well? Because I think it is a very challenging question, and I really like the fact that it kind of raises a few issues. I guess what Alexa's also been saying is that we were in quite a large transition, you know, in most economies to a more sustainable environment and the renewables environment. And then what has happened in this recent, mainly in the developed world, the crisis around energy, because I think, you know, the rest of the world has been challenged with energy supply for some time. But certainly for me, the real dilemma is that there are transitions happening and there are some choices, even to move to a very renewable energy focused environment. And let's take, for instance, solar as an option on that. You would still need to have solar panels. You would still probably have to have batteries. You would still probably have to have some other forms of transmission. All of those minerals, whether they be for the panels themselves, or whether they were for the metal, aluminium, steel, is not necessarily sourced in the country in which, is not available in the country in which it's manufactured. So often in transitioning into a more sustainable environment, the long supply chain. So let's say, for instance, in Africa, if the majority of our panels are imported, say, from the East, from China, the transmission of those panels using vessels who are using oil primarily is a challenge. So we need to have a look at that whole supply chain. And there are conversations we're having with our maritime clients about transitioning maybe to a hydrogen option. So this is the net zero conversation that Alexa is asking us to consider. You know, in order to transition to a more sustainable future, there may have to be some choices along the way, and we can look at some strategies to make it more sustainable. But in the short run, even if we just went to a very solar powered environment, it would put a lot of pressure from the mining operations. The silicate that is used for the glass, the aluminium that's sourced is sourced in the locations which are not often where the market is. So I think, you know, this energy crisis that is brought about it has made us revert back. But certainly, even if we go forward to a more sustainable future, we're going to still have to think about the net zero conversation. So I see Alexa's back. So maybe you can continue the conversation, and maybe there's some other questions, Maduka, that have popped up. So.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff, and apologies again. It's utterly terrible, the signal. But exactly, so Jeff, as you were saying, I think also one of the things we have to understand is that with the push to net zero, what's happened is that particularly the electric vehicle industry and the solar industry has seen huge constraints on supply of those particular critical minerals, such as copper, lithium. And so what we're seeing actually is that there's a complete backlog in that supply, which is causing such an issue in power continuation because, as Jeff said, so lithium particularly is very geography based. So we have deposits in very particular areas. So, like Jeff said, net zero is about a transition, and that's why it was written in the Paris Agreement, and that's why it's important to understand what the impact of renewable energy also means, and understand when can you offset the use of fossil fuels.
All right, thank you very much, Alexa, for your response. That was just so powerful, and we really learned a lot from that. So we'll be going over to other questions we have. There's a question here we have from Rumesa. Rumesa is asking, you mentioned there are several reporting standards that are currently available, such as GRI and non-financial reporting under IFRS. I'm curious to know how one chooses the reporting standard they should follow.
100%. Thank you, Maduka. Very, very interesting question. And we get this question quite a lot. So there is, first of all, 88% of companies reporting on ESG are currently using GRI. So that's just on a number base. It is the most widely used reporting standard, but it does not mean that it necessarily is the correct standard for your industry or sector. So what one has to do is have a look at what industry are you in, and out of the standards that exist, some of them have very particular sector-specific reporting requirements that have been identified particularly to assist in reporting of those industries. So one would have to reach out to a consultant to assist in understanding your business and understanding what your materiality requirements would be and what reporting standards should be used. Alternatively, and this is what I absolutely love about the current years, is we have Google, and as much as I don't like anyone to become a ESG advisor through Google, there is the opportunity to go and review the standards and understand from an executive summary or summary perspective if it has relevance to your industry. So that, as said, GRI Secondly, the most used from a climate perspective and the standards that have set off a lot of the reporting that we see today is TCFD, Task Force Against Climate. So I would suggest having a look at those, and if it doesn't seem to fit your industry, there's also SASB. SASB has 77 different industries and sectors that can be used.
All right, thank you very much, Alexa, for making us understand that the standard to be used is peculiar to the operations of the business. So it's very important for us to know that, and thank you for making us know that the organization needs to consider its materiality in setting a standard that is supposed to use, and the organization is also supposed to consult a consultant to have an informed knowledge about the right ESG standard to use. Thank you very much, Alexa. So we'll move over to the next question. This next question is for me, and I'm asking, how do we know if a company is ESG compliant in its operations? How do we know if a company is ESG compliant in its operations? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matu. That's a fantastic question. So I think the answer is twofold. First is, if a company indicates that they are ESG compliant, they should have an ESG report available. What comes off the back of that is what we call ESG Assurance. And a lot of us will understand from an auditing perspective what assurance means. And that's literally a service offering that we provide as well, to say, okay, well, here's a company's ESG report. They say they're reporting, let's say, just on general standards, or maybe they've used multiple standards or a single standard. Let's actually go and review the report and assure that the report is being written and drafted, and the information that is being uploaded is in line with the standards that they say they're having. Alternatively, if they're just generally reporting, is what they're saying actually being seen? And it literally is an audit process, an assurance process, to say, okay, well, you say your CO2 emission as this transport company is 2 tons. Okay, well, let's go through all your petrol slips. Let's go through every single result or test report that you have from your stacks. Let's actually go and verify the information that you say that you have, that you're reporting against. And that's where it's so fantastic with the ESG service offering, is that we don't actually only have the consulting element, which requires reporting, but we actually provide assurance as well. And particularly, we're seeing this coming a lot from the financial institutions who are handing out green bonds or sustainability-linked bonds that are bringing their clients' reports to us and saying, please do an assurance test on this to determine that the company is actually saying what they're doing.
All right, thank you very much, Alexa, for that wonderful response. So we'll take the next question. And the next question here is, the next question here says, in a country like Nigeria, where the government don't pay much attention to sustainability regulations, what do you think can be done to encourage SMEs to be ESG compliant? Because essentially, being ESG compliant is an extra expense. Renewable energy, for example, costs a lot. So in a country like Nigeria, Alexa, where the government don't pay much attention to sustainability regulations and implementation, what do you think that should be done to encourage SMEs to be ESG compliant? That's a question from this participant.
100%. Thank you so much for the question. And I think it's really important. When you have government that does not review ESG or sustainability linked policies as important, it's very difficult to generally have that top-down approach to say, okay, well, if government is seeing it as necessary, businesses will follow through. So it does cause a bit of an issue when you feel like there isn't that backup of the government behind you. But I think the thing about ESG and ESG reporting in itself, it's actually a business-based approach. So what it's saying is that businesses and entities are the hub of money and financial impact in a country. So if the businesses take it on themselves to have a look at it, they don't actually need the backing of the government, because then businesses will want to do business with other businesses that are trying to do better business. So for an SME particularly, the best way to start is, again, education. Always educate yourself about understanding what it means. What does it mean for your industry? And to ask questions. Ask questions to your clients. Ask questions to your staff. Ask what sustainability means to them. What are your investors, your shareholders? What is important to them for your business? What is material to your business running based on the stakeholder input and internal employee input? And then identify those and use that as a starting point to create business culture and business elements that are in line with those. Because once you start hearing what other people have to say and caring about what they have to say, then the business will start actually having a look and understanding that piece. And usually it creates a ripple effect. I mean, it's not always immediate, but it will create a chain reaction where if you're doing it, okay, well, if you're a professional services firm and you are doing ESG reporting, or you are ESG aware or have sustainability concepts, I would rather want to come and do business with you. So now other businesses are going to start doing it as well, because they're going to see it as a competitive edge. So we just implore that businesses have a look at it and actually consider what would be important for their business continuity, not just at a director level, but at a stakeholder and an employee level.
I guess, Maduka, I had an additional comment to that, and it's maybe more in sort of the normal civil realm here. You know, if we're only going to stick to the speed limit on a highway because we see the police officers, you know, we're going to have lots of accidents. So, you know, I think it's really important in what Alexa's saying there. You know, good people will manage and self-manage, and you will travel with, you know, a taxi driver, or you'll go with somebody who is compliant, and not just compliant because there's a policeman present. So I think it is important that the regulatory framework support good work, but we can just be good on our own. We can literally just be good on our own. And I think that's what ESG is trying to strive for, is that, you know, have good practices that will make, you know, good people join you. You'll have good customers, and the planet won't be affected in the same instance. If we're waiting for outsiders to tell us to do that, then we're on a, you know, path to self-destruction.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff, for that addition. We'll move over to the next question we have here. And it says, what is the real benefit of ESG disclosures for businesses beyond mandatory compliance requirements? Any example of major success recorded in any of our South Africa clients?
So a fantastic question. So I think one of the biggest answers here is, again, I'm going to reiterate the bottom line impact that ESG reporting and disclosure has. And the More Intelligence ESG white paper that was produced in September this year indicates that there's a $4 trillion business imperative throughout the world for ESG disclosures. So that meaning that companies can save up to $4 trillion globally if they disclose correctly. Secondly, as I said previously, is that there is sustainability linked finance. So very big for business, particularly SMEs who require finance. So the disclosures are going to allow them to be able to obtain that finance. And then again, it makes you look like you care, if you disclose. And I know that sometimes that's not necessarily the top of the executive board's mind, is do people care? But people who see business as understanding and disclosing, like I said, 74% higher chance of them actually approaching a business that is sustainability orientated rather than a competitor that is not.
All right, thank you, Alexa. I think you addressed this question even when you were having your session, when you said something about ESG reporting. You said it provides confidence in investors, and it also provides that confidence in customers that the firm or the organization is doing what is right. So I think that covers one of the benefits of ESG reporting. Thank you very much, Alexa. So we'll be going over to the next question we have here. And this question says, any interface, what's the interface between CSR and ESG? Any opportunities for businesses to leverage on their CSR initiatives towards ESG compliance? The person is asking if there's any interface between CSR and ESG, and if there are any opportunities for businesses to leverage on their CSR initiatives towards ESG compliance. Thank you very much.
100%, and thank you for the question. So I think the first answer I'm going to give is yes, you can leverage it when it comes to your ESG reporting, because CSR, corporate social responsibility, literally looks at your social responsibility as a company and how are you doing things to assist the community around you. So if you already have a CSR policy in place and have implemented particular social acts of either providing funding or providing services or time or donating, those elements will fall under your S in the reporting elements of ESG. So that's again another reiteration to say, like, a lot of the time businesses already have things in place that are happening that will actually fall in under the ESG reporting that they're already doing. So yes, there is a link, and it's important to have both of them as separate elements, because one is a report where CSR is your actual doing. So your CSR policies and implementation will be seen as a separate entity or a marketing element to say, this is what we're doing. But then you would put that into your report to show, okay, well, in the financial year of FY21 or 22, this is what the company did. Here's our CSR program. It's linked, it's connected in. You've already established that. So already that element of that S is fulfilled.
All right. Thank you very much, Alexa, for your response to that question. And I think we should be able to squeeze in probably one or two more questions before we call it a day on this webinar. The next question says, do you anticipate that ESG reporting will eventually be required by law? Do you anticipate that ESG reporting will eventually be required by law? Because over here in Nigeria, the requirement by the law is very low on ESG reporting. So this participant just wants to know if you anticipate in the nearest future that there will be a global compulsion that ESG reporting should be done by organizations. Thank you very much, Alexa.
100%, and thank you for the question. And I think a lot of the time, this question in itself about mandatory versus voluntary reporting is quite a big aspect when it comes to businesses deciding to produce an ESG report or not. So twofold answer. One, yes, it will become mandatory. We're already seeing this happening in the EU, in Europe, as well as in the USA, as well as in Hong Kong, and even in your stock exchanges. Literally, let's say listed entities are already required to report on sustainability. So That's moving down now to not only listed entities, but large entities, which we see Europe is requiring already them to mandatorily report. And they anticipate that in terms of their timeline, by 2025, SMEs will be required to report in terms of the legislation that is being drafted in the EU. So the EU is obviously quite ahead of us, but they are leading the way, and the USA under the Security Exchange Control is also following suit in terms of trickling down the mandatory reporting. And so we anticipate, based on the movement that we've seen, particularly with the JSE, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, requiring sustainability reporting now, that it's going to have a movement into SMEs and into Africa, particularly, like I said, when it comes with financial institutions. It's going to be a large portion of their requirements when we're looking at businesses and business funding. So it's going to take a little bit of a while. I think Africa might, as we always do, be a little late to the party, but that's okay. We're at least trying. But based on this, the stream of events that is currently happening, I expect by 2025 that it will be mandatory for SMEs.
Yeah, thank you, Alexa, for your expert forecast. And you are giving us a forecast that you expect by 2025, ESG reporting would be made mandatory to mostly African countries. Thank you very much for that. And I think we'll be taking the last question for this webinar. And the question goes thus. Thank you, Alexa. This has been a great learning session. What are the challenges being faced across the African continent regarding ESG? What are the challenges being faced across the African continent regarding ESG?
Thank you for the question, and I think it's very important that we also have a focus on Africa and the challenges in terms of ESG reporting, particularly in Africa. And I think it was raised by the previous question, indicating the lack of governmental implementation of regulations, legislation, frameworks and requirements. So one of our biggest issues is that governments are not taking sustainability and ESG reporting as seriously as some other governments are. And like Jeff said, also is like, yes, having that backing is really important, because what it does is it really is that top-down approach to say, okay, well, if government finds it important, then companies will. So I think that's our biggest challenge. Secondly is there's a lot of issues about business cost. And business costs are rising, inflation, staff costs are rising. So a lot of the time, businesses are doing the, I want to.
Always at the key moment, poor Alexa's power goes out, I think. I think she's touched on some of the key points already. So I guess she's going to come back in, Maduka, so I'll leave her to complete her comments, and then maybe I can say something at the end of it.
I'm back. This is a lot of fun. It's actually a surprise show, so that everyone stays on their toes while we're on this call. So just to finalize what I was saying on the second point is businesses are looking at challenges and issues within their business and ranking them or rating them from like highest to lowest. And unfortunately, ESG reporting is not on the top of the list for a lot of companies. So business cost is another challenge. And the third challenge is that also, and it's very interestingly came up at the Mozambican transport conference that I was speaking in May, is that Africa requires African solutions, So a lot of the time what happens is that we try and take on solutions that are bought out from the Western world, and actually they aren't designed for Africa. So I think also what we're going to do is make sure that when we're looking at the international reporting standards and when we're looking at the African business space, is one of our challenges is that business in Africa is very different to other places. So how do we ensure that the reporting requirements that are there and the way that we do business in Africa, we actually can find a commonality or at least a smooth approach to it? Because things happen very differently in Africa. So we need to be cognizant of that and don't see it as a challenge, but actually an opportunity to be able to develop frameworks and understanding, particularly for Africa, that can assist us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alexa, for your response. And as we wrap up the webinar for today, we would like to actually get your final words or your conclusive remark based on the information you've shared with us today. Any final word from you, Alexa?
Thank you so much, Maduka. I mean, I could talk for hours about this. And again, I just want to thank Bishop and Rooks for the opportunity to speak. Apologies again for the intermittent connection. Nonetheless, it's been an honor to be able to speak today about a topic I said like I'm very passionate about. And I think the final message that goes out today is just be good, be better, and if you are, so will your business, and so will your people, and so will the rest of the businesses around you. And take the time to understand what ESG means and actually why it is important.
All right, thank you, Alexa. Well, before you leave, someone sent a message to you. The person is saying, thanks, Alexa, for this awesome session. Thanks to all the participants, especially for the diverse sets of questions. Thanks to Jeff for also acting as our unofficial backup facilitator due to the glitches, in addition to the takeaways from this session. I'm so excited with Alexa's closing statement. Africa needs African solutions. So that's the chat from this individual. So before we wrap up on this webinar today, I don't know if Jeff has one or two closing remarks before we call it a day on the webinar. Over to you, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you, Maduka. I don't want to wrap up further than what Alexa said. I think she summarized it very well, so I won't want to cover that. But I do believe that the ESG is a journey. So I've learned a lot in the last 12 months, becoming a little bit more involved with the discussions, not only with Alexa, but other professionals within the network. We've engaged with people and clients externally. So it really is a point where, at any one stage, you could dip in to, what changes are happening. So it is, if you're passionate about it, as Alexa is, it's an ongoing journey of education. You're not just going to learn now, I heard this and it's now I know about ESG. Because the next evolution will be, there will be a new framework, a new technology, a new client's approach that will kind of challenge what you've just expected and thought you knew. And it's really important. And I think the S part for me is probably the biggest opportunity that Africa has to make significant change. We have fantastic people. They really are talented. And within our own network and within the clients that are on this call, we mustn't forget that the talent pool we have, the rest of the world is struggling with talent. We have the talent. So I think your Africa solutions, Africans must come up. We have the talent to do that. We can really capitalize on the S, and we have the resources and we have the capability. We just need to kind of click into the right mindset. So Maduka, that's my parting thought, and thank you very much to everybody again.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff. We'd like to really appreciate the presence of everyone in this webinar today. We'd like to appreciate the management of Moore, Bishop and Rooks. We also love to appreciate the wonderful presence of Alexa and our emergency backup facilitator, Mr. Jeff. We are so grateful for your presence here today, and most especially our participants that are connected from all over the world. We are so grateful to have had this insightful session with you. We'll be sharing a feedback link to all participants to let us in on everything that happened in this session today. And we'll try as much as possible to send you our articles, publications on ESG, so you'll be more acquainted with ESG and ESG activities. So even as we wrap up for today, we'd like to appreciate everyone for today's webinar. So you could check the chat box for the link. So we get your feedback on this session we've had today. So on this note, I'd like to appreciate everyone and bring the seminar or the webinar to an end. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely day. And again, thank you so much to Bishop and Max.
Thank you so much, Alexa. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you,
So good having you.
Have a lovely, lovely day
Thank you so much.